ask you.
Hi, what brings you in today?
Um, I'm gonna be moving back home for the next year, or at least a year, while I'm going to grad school, and I'm kind of worried about my transition back to living with my family.
Like, what kind of transition?
Well, I've been used to having my own bedroom up here for the past couple of years, and it was just like nice to have my own space. That when I wanted to, have some personal time, I could just go in my own room, lock the door, no one would bother me, and there was a space to call my own. Whereas at home, I share a bedroom with my sister, and her and I get along really, really well. And so normally nothing's really an issue, but it's just I'm not no longer going to have that space to call my own, and which I've gotten very much used to. That's just like one example. And like my parents appreciate knowing where I am, like if I'm going to be home in time for dinner or not, if I'm going to get home kind of late, like normally after they would go to bed. Whereas up here, I'm not used to having to fill them in with what time I'm going to be home and things like that. So like I'm worried it might cause problems if I don't keep them in the loop as much as they would like, versus like telling them where I am all the time.
It's definitely like freedom. You're almost losing because once you go to school, you gain that, and then going back home, it's almost going back into the older days where like you have those guidelines and obviously those house rules that you need to follow.
Yeah, and I'm afraid at first my parents might kind of fail to appreciate I'm as old as I am and I'm an adult, and so like I'm sufficient at taking care of myself. I have for the past 4 years, and I fear that they might just kind of like lump me in with my siblings who are in high school, where they do have to kind of have a curfew and have a little bit more like limitations, whereas I feel as though I shouldn't because I'm going to be 21 soon, and I've been living on my own for 4 years and been just fine.
Yeah, it's obviously a tough place to be with because they are your parents. Have you talked about this with them at all? Because like, were you prepared to be moving back home?
Yeah, my parents are completely okay with me living at home, and they always like encourage me to live at home as long as I need, because especially with just like how expensive things are nowadays, they would love me to like stay home if that meant I could save up money to pay off my loans or eventually put down a down payment on a place for my own. Because I mean, my mom lived at home, but my dad moved out right away, so they kind of have a perspective from each, and they like want to help me out. And so they're okay with me living at home, but we didn't really talk about what it means for me to live at home.
Okay.
I talk to my dad more than my mom when I'm up at school, and so him and I talked about it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I plan on having a conversation, I think, with my mom like when I come home.
Okay.
But I already talked a little bit with my dad, and I'm like, I hope you guys understand that I'm not trying to be mean, but I kind of expect this like along the same lines of freedom that I've had up at school, where I don't have to keep you guys in the loop 24/7. And it's not like I'm trying to hide anything,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm already going to be very busy with school and a job. And so trying to like keep them in the loop 24/7 is going to be an added stressor, and I don't want to feel upset like or like I'm letting them down if they get annoyed with me, and like I just don't need that added stress because I'm used to not having it. And he seems to understand because my dad was also a very independent person,
Mm-hmm.
but it might also be him just saying that now. It might be a little bit different once I'm actually living at home again.
Seems like you are a little bit worried, but looking at it, you've already kind of taken a good first step in, talking with your father and kind of planning to have a conversation with your mom about going back home. I think it's definitely a good place to start. There's nothing, I feel, through parents you can't talk to them about. Have you thought about things that you would like to almost do when you move in to kind of give you that safe place and avoid all that stress?
Hopefully there's a room in our basement that it's kind of like unused right now, but it's like a finished room, and my dad like offered to try and help me transition that to a bedroom. So if I wanted to be on my own and like have my own space again, we can try and accommodate that, especially because my sister is on a different time schedule than me, and so I don't want to have to wake up to her alarm at 6 in the morning every day if that's not the time I have to get up. And so that way we both kind of have our freedom to wake up when we do and go to bed when we do without worrying about trying to keep not trying to keep the other person up or being rude or anything. Because like I'm used to when I wake up in the morning, I turn on the light because there's no one else to worry about, and I can stay up as late as I want studying or whatever. And so my dad offered to try and make that work. So hopefully we can do that if it becomes
So
an
that is
issue.
something you're interested in then?
Yeah.
That's good. Because that way you can still have the boundaries and the limitations you have here at school, and then going home and still being able to have that place to call your own. Because seems that's what's really giving you the most trouble, is losing that freedom and having that sense of limitation within yourself. It's definitely going to be a huge adjustment, going home and living with your parents again, especially being away for 4 years. You've matured and you kind of found your own way. And are you worried that it's going to be different, or that they're going to try and change things? Or
I think it's just going to be an adjustment process for all of us. Okay. And kind of my parents are going to have to spend some time with me to see how much I've matured over the past 4 years and how self-sufficient I've become. And I'm going to have to get used to like living under their roof again, because I mean, it is their house, and it's fair that they have some rules for like what goes on in their home. And I do appreciate that, and I don't want to like be disrespectful and ungrateful for the fact that they're letting me live at home for free. They're still going to buy food, you know, all the stuff that I need to like do laundry, all the things that I've had to pay for up here, and like it's going to come free of cost when I live back at home. So I don't want to seem ungrateful for that. Okay. And so I think we're going to have to kind of like give it some time and reach some compromise for me getting the freedom I would like, with them getting the, you know, being kept in the loop as much as they would like. I'm not quite sure a good term for that, but
yeah. So an ideal picture, would you, just to clarify, would be having your freedom while still obtaining by some of your parents' rules, or do you feel you should just be able to make your own choices and be able to decide when you're going to come home or what you're going to do? Is it more of that, or do you feel you're kind of worried about making everyone happy in this situation?
I would hope that they would like give me the freedom, and I don't think that me coming home at a certain time is going to be an issue, because it's never really been an issue so far. Their rule was always just let me know if you're going to be later than midnight. And normally I'm really good about, you know, abiding by that and just letting them know so they're not waiting up for me and they leave the lights on outside so I can, like, see up our driveway and things like that. But I'm afraid that, you know, if I'm studying for an exam in a library, especially with, like, people in my classes, I might not remember to tell them. And I don't want them to get angry at me for it, especially because, like, it's not like I'm out partying. Like, I'm going to be doing something productive. Because I know my life is going to be pretty busy and pretty school and work focused. Yeah. And so, like, I don't want that to become an issue, because I don't need the added stress of them getting mad at me, but I also don't want to, like, worry them, because that's not fair either. I mean, they are my parents, so it's their job to worry about me.
Where would you say your communication is with your parents, like, from past to present? Like, is it an open communication, or is there ever been struggles communicating between you guys?
It's kind of different with each of my parents. Okay. My dad and I have a completely, like, open relationship, and I'm not afraid to tell him how I'm thinking, how I'm feeling. My dad's a counselor, so he's really good at listening and then helping reach a compromise. And he understands my need for freedom, especially at this point in my life. He's really, really good about that. Okay. My mom is a little bit different. She doesn't have that kind of counseling communication background. Yeah. And so sometimes I feel like she kind of slips into that parent role where what I say goes, and she has to kind of take a step back and realize at this point I'm an adult, so like we have to actually talk things through and kind of reach a compromise. Okay. And she can't just give me that ultimatum anymore, because if things got really bad, although it wouldn't be ideal and it would be hard to make ends meet, I would move out, just because I don't want to deal with the stress. I don't want to stress them out, but like I don't want it to have to come to that, because I don't want to like put a wedge in our relationship. Definitely. I want to make this work for all of us.
Yeah, so it definitely seems like you want it to work. You don't want to have like that other option, I'll just move out. You really seem as if this is something you know that you want this, and it's going to definitely be getting your entire family and yourself on board for it.
Yeah.
Definitely from the mother's standpoint, she's obviously a little protective, so maybe that would be another thing you would want to address. Maybe being able to just sit down with the two of you and possibly having a conversation about where you feel with her and your relationship with her, as you feel she needs to take a step back and kind of let you take the reins on something or not. I think definitely it would be maybe a good place to start if you're open to that.
No, I think that's definitely a good idea, because her and I always kind of struggled with communication. I think we're too much alike, and so we just end up arguing. Mm-hmm. And me being away at school has actually done wonders for our relationship, because we're not forced to deal with each other on a day-to-day basis. So, like, things don't add up since we don't always talk about things that are going wrong right then and there. Like my father and I do, so like when I'm up at school, we only talk like once a week or so, and we get along great. And when I'm home, since I'm not home that long, we don't have that time to like get on each other's nerves.
Okay.
But now that I'm going to be like living at home all the time and she's going to see me on a more regular basis, if we don't work on our communication, I fear that it could get bad.
Okay.
And so I think that working on our communication would be like a really good first step so that we can learn how to talk to each other about our problems and, you know, where we draw the lines for like rules and regulations versus my freedom while I'm going to school.
Okay, so it's definitely seeming like your mom may not necessarily be the problem, but obviously something that is making you feel stressed out about moving back home just because you're worried that you two might clash or not get along as good as you would hope. Now, going back to having your own safe place, you could even use that as a thing too to possibly, if say you and your mom do come into a confrontation or disagreement, that you could possibly get away again. But definitely I think you need to think about yourself in this situation. I feel you're really focused on everyone else around you, making everyone else happy and not breaking all the rules and not really thinking to yourself, like, what do I need to do to make sure I have the success that I need when I'm in grad school while still being able to live at home.
No, and I do realize my first priority is going to be doing well in school, no matter what that means. And then I'm going to also have to have a job because, I mean, I'm going to have to make money and stuff and, like, pay for tuition. And so I know that that has to be a main focus. The main reason that I'm, like, worried about moving back at home is because that's kind of a factor that could either be very stressful or could go very well. And ideally I would like it to go very well and have everyone be happy, including myself. And I've just been worrying and stressing out about that potentially being a stressful factor when I have other things to worry about, such as being in school and doing well while also maintaining a job.
Definitely. And are you planning on maybe having a conversation with your parents before grad school starts for you? Like, when does that all start to happen?
I would probably want to have a conversation with them, like, right after graduation when I move back home, because I'm going to live at home for the summer, too. And that's going to be my start of living at home until I get my own place. And so I kind of would like to make the ground rules for the summer, too, where, like, I'm going to be 21 years old, like, I'm an adult, I've lived on my own for the past 4 years, so even in the summer when I'm working, like, I would still like the freedom to just do as I please, come home when I want, and not always have to keep you in the loop, because I don't want to have to always worry about that. But if you call and text me or ask me where I am, it's not like I'm going to ignore you, just don't get mad if I forget, which normally I'm, like, pretty good about not forgetting, but in the case that I do, like, don't get too angry about it. So I would like to, like, kind of work on that this summer so that once I actually start school in the fall and, like, the end of August, by then it kind of has become a new routine, and hopefully we're pretty well adjusted to me living at home again, so that it's not something we're just adjusting to while I'm starting school.
Because it's definitely an adjustment for you, and it's also an adjustment for your entire family, because, you know, you've been gone for 4 years and now you're coming back to this environment that you've kind of not been in for a while. So definitely finding like a compromise. How do you feel about having this conversation with your parents? Like, how do you feel you will do in that situation? Are you ready for that? Or
I think so. Especially like going away to school has kind of forced me to grow up a lot, and especially dealing with all of my own problems while I'm up here. So I feel as though I've gotten a lot better at communication as a whole since I've come up to school. And so I think it'll go well, especially like the part of the conversation with my dad, because him and I have always had such a good relationship where we could tell each other these types of things and have a good, honest conversation where we both said how we felt and then reached a compromise. I do worry about my mother a little bit because, like I said, sometimes she like slips into that mother role where she she's the parent on the child still, child just being like I'm her kid. And so sometimes she's not always the best with conversation either. And so I hope that like if it's me and my parents together, my dad can just be like, let's sit and talk about this. So I think it would be really good to have him there kind of as a mediator, since he's a counselor, he's good at these things. Yeah. It's like tough because he like brings that like to home, and we all get mad because he's so good at it. And I think that could really help my mother like sit and have a conversation and not just get up and walk away if she gets frustrated, which is typically what people in my family do.
Okay.
And so I like it because I think this conversation is important to have.
Definitely. I think it's a very important step to making it successful for you to live at home in a stress-free environment and still be able to, you know, focus on school and having the fun that obviously you're interested in having. I mean, you're 21 and you are still young and want to go out and enjoy your time while you can. So I think having almost a set of ground rules and allowing it to kind of work together for a little bit before grad school starts, I think is definitely a good place to start. So it's good that you have I can tell personally that you really want it to work out at home. So definitely I do encourage you trying to have that conversation between your parents. And if it's both of them, it's going to make it easier for you, then definitely do that. Is there anything else? Like, I know you've mentioned you feel very stressed about the possibility of moving home and losing all of that freedom and being stressed over school. How, like, aside from moving back home, like, how do you feel about going to grad school?
I'm excited to start.
Okay.
And so, especially because I just got accepted really recently, like the excitement's, thank you, the excitement's still so new, and so I'm like ready to start now, just because I'm excited to move on to the next chapter of my life. I know this summer will be good to have some kind of cooling off period between like finishing school here and then going on to school again in the fall. I am still like a little nervous though, because when I interviewed, I talked to the professor who would be my advisor, and he was upfront and honest about how stressful my first semester is going to be, and how I'm going to have a lot going on between classes and adjusting to graduate level classes, while also fulfilling the demands that I have for working in a lab. And he knows that I'm going to be commuting, which is just extra time, since it's going to be like a decently long commute. So that's just time that I like can't spend being productive. And then he knows that I'm probably going to have another job on top of that. And so he was very honest and was like, I know this is going to be very difficult for you, because his bottom line was that like if I'm having any problems, I should come to him. And so, which I'm grateful to have that support from him. And so I believe I can rise to the challenge that grad school is going to bring, but it is a little nerve-wracking, because I know it's going to be hard, and people have told me it's going to be hard.
Yeah, it's definitely a whole new chapter, and it's going to be a huge new chapter for you moving back home and then attending grad school. So definitely I think a good step for you is kind of developing these ground rules within your family and having that conversation with your parents, and even if you want to include your siblings in on it, because it's going to be an adjustment for them too, and being able to sit down and put a plan in place that is not only going to be good for you but also for your family. I think that would be a good, not even a good step, but almost a good goal, is to have also having that safe environment, being home, it's a safe place, but you also having the ability to have your personal time. So I think definitely working towards having better communication with your mom possibly could help in the whole situation.
Yeah.
If you're willing to kind of do that. I know you said you're more into talking to your dad than your mom, but it's definitely a good place to start. So, well, it's about all of our time for this week. Would you like to meet in next week?
Sounds good to me.
All right, so you try and focus on communicating a little bit better with your mom, and we'll meet next week.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, God. Oh, I should